Fear Collective, what's up? Thanks for joining me for our second installment of our Jingle Hell marathon. Today we're going to be getting into the scares and subtext of 2005's Noroi, The Curse. So, essentially, the narrative of this film is presented in snippets. You're watching clips that form a mockumentary of a paranormal investigator who is investigating a missing girl in Japan. And what we get is a series of interviews and TV spots that inform the greater mystery. And at first, it seems very random and it feels very confusing because you're introduced to a wide variety of characters and it jumps around from different times in the month from month to month and then also different settings. So you're really kind of left wondering, where is this even going? And that's why I struggled with it the first time I watched it, because I just wasn't in the mood to invest that much mental energy into the film. And I turned it off and I waited 3 months, and here I am watching it again. But I sat down, my attention was undivided, and I was like, I'm gonna get this movie because I've heard that it really is super scary and I wanted to get scared. And I'm so glad that I stuck with it because it really does have an incredible payoff. This movie feels very much like The Blair Witch Project, which is one of my favorite horror movies, if not my favorite horror movie of all time. And here's why. It's not just because of the obvious parallels between the two films. The Blair Witch Project was a mockumentary where they go around and interview townspeople to get information, and that builds this foundation of super creepy atmosphere, much like Noroi does. But the Blair Witch Project is also distinctly reserved. Everything is very subtle. There's a lot of things that happen off camera, and that forces the viewer to use their imagination to fill in the blanks. And if you're someone like me who has a super crazy big overactive imagination, that makes the viewing experience super scary because you can fill in those blanks with some really crazy stuff. And Noroi does that. In much of the same vein. It really plays out like a true crime narrative where you feel like you're a detective being presented with all of the information that's relevant to the case, and then you're trying to piece everything together to figure out just exactly what is going on. The direction that this film goes in is very unexpected and made it super enjoyable, strengthening the overall payoff and making the entire viewing experience just a creepy good time. Each clip that you're presented with in the film builds upon the last and informs information or tidbits of information that were introduced to you in previous clips. So one character might name drop a name or an occurrence, and then 30 minutes later in the film, another character references that same character or that same name, that same place, and it all kind of starts to click together. And when it does, it just gets creepier and creepier. So if you've heard reviews about this film, you will have heard that it really succeeds in building this mounting dread. And to be honest, I really didn't get that until the movie was over and I turned it off, and it was 1 p.m. in broad daylight in my apartment. And I was super creeped out. I felt this real tension in my body where I was afraid that I wasn't alone in the house. It's that feeling that someone's watching you. There's just this palpable tension that this film really inspired in me that I honestly didn't even realize was happening until after the fact. And that's why I love this movie so much, because it's just so subtle. There aren't overt scares. There's nothing that's like, scary. It's all slowly built up so that by the end of the viewing experience, you're left with this very hollow, just weirded out vibe that was just very unique to this film, very similar to the Blair Witch Project, and just totally up my alley. So, if you're a fan of true crime or found footage, or if you're a fan of J-horror, I would recommend streaming Noroi the Curse, which is showing on Shudder currently. Again, it's not a super Christmassy movie, but it looked freaking cold, and for that reason, I decided to include it in my Jingle Hell marathon. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.